Washington's wetlands. One would never know that their quiet existence is vital to keeping nature in balance with itself. The abundant growth of plant life provides refuge for countless numbers of birds and other wildlife. Man is beginning to realize the extreme importance of preserving wetlands, for all living things depend on water. Wetlands benefit and influence ecosystems from the mountains to the sea. Washington State is home to a wide variety of wetlands. Wetlands can be found in both fresh and saltwater environments. Their sizes are as diverse as their forms. Typically, any area that is inundated or saturated with water long enough to support water-loving vegetation is classified as a wetland habitat. Wetlands are generally characterized by the presence of hydric soils. These are soils that are permanently or frequently saturated while supporting hydrophytic plants, plants that grow in water or wet soil. Some examples of wetlands include wet meadows, which are dominated by water-tolerant grasses and grass-like plants, such as sedges and rushes. The ground is usually flooded during wet months and dry during drought months, making recognition difficult at dry times. Bogs consist of deep peat soils made of partially decomposed mosses or sedges. The soils are often waterlogged and spongy. Dominant plants include emergents, shrubs or trees adapted to acidic, low-nutrient soils. Marshes are usually characterized by standing water year-round. Emergent, submerged, and floating plants are often interspersed with areas of open water. Estuarine marshes are formed where there is a mix of fresh and salt water. Low estuarine marshes are inundated by daily high tides. Plant life includes sedges, rushes, and fleshy plants, especially adapted to salt water. High estuarine marshes are flooded only by the highest tides each month. They are typified by salt-tolerant grasses and wildflowers. Swamps consist of mainly woody plants in standing water. Forested swamps are dominated by trees, usually Sitka spruce, red alder, or western red cedar. Sedges are often present as ground cover. Scrub shrub swamps are dominated by dense thickets of shrubs, typically willows, spirea, and red osier dogwood. Not too long ago, wetlands were primarily thought of as smelly breeding grounds for mosquitoes and other undesirable insects. They were believed to have no value of their own. As a result, more than half of the nation's estimated 200 million acres of wetlands have been destroyed, and our wetlands continue to decrease alarmingly, as an estimated 400,000 acres of wetlands are lost every year. Most wetland losses are caused by conversion to agricultural use, as well as urban and industrial development. But in more recent years, awareness of the importance of wetlands has increased dramatically. Protecting America's remaining wetland areas and preserving their environmental benefits have become important issues in both the public and private sectors. Because of this importance, the Washington State Department of Transportation has conducted extensive research to quantify wetland development by selecting and evaluating monitoring methods and criteria. Wetlands are important in a variety of ways. First, they act as a cleansing system, improving the quality of surface water. Wetlands trap floating debris and filter out sediments. They absorb, store, and detoxify chemical compounds, and they remove excess nutrients dissolved in the water. Second, riverine or riparian wetlands store floodwaters from rivers, thereby reducing flood peaks during storms. Third, one of the most important functions of wetlands is to provide valuable habitat for a variety of wildlife and the food chain supporting them. Shorebirds, waterfowl, and other migrating birds depend heavily on wetlands for feeding and resting areas. Small fish use wetlands as a safe place to feed, sheltered from predators. And finally, the diversity and abundance of wetlands offer countless educational and recreational opportunities. the Nisqually National Wildlife Refuge on South Puget Sound, Bowerman Basin in Grays Harbor County, and Columbia National Wildlife Refuge south of Moses Lake are three well-known examples of wetlands whose educational and recreational features attract thousands of visitors every year. Because we have finally recognized the importance of wetlands, federal and state regulations are enforced to protect and preserve them as an important resource. The wetland protection effort accelerated in 1977 when President Carter issued Executive Order 11990. This order mandates that projects needing federal permits or using federal dollars must avoid construction in wetlands wherever there is a practical alternative. Following the executive order, the Federal Highway Administration developed its own directive to avoid wetlands. The FHWA stated that highway projects should be designed, constructed, and operated to assure the protection, preservation, and enhancement of the nation's wetlands. The Army Corps of Engineers administers Section 404 of the Clean Water Act, which controls filling of wetlands. This section of the law most often affects the Department of Transportation. Under Section 404, permits are required for most highway construction and some maintenance activities involving wetlands. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Environmental Protection Agency, and various state and local agencies also have roles in wetland protection and preservation. These rules clearly detail the DOT's options when a highway project appears to be in conflict with a wetland. They can be found in the design manual and in the environmental procedures manual. Planning for wetland protection begins at square one, during the preparation of project location and design documents. This is when highway location alternatives that avoid wetlands are first evaluated. If wetlands cannot be totally avoided, then options confining the construction area to reduce wetland impacts are evaluated. Examples of these options include building steeper slopes, retaining walls, and bridges. But even after careful study and modification, some construction projects can still result in unfavorable impacts to wetlands. These impacts can be caused by many factors. Filling to realign highways or to widen existing roads is one. Draining by modifying ditches, stream channels, or natural drainage patterns is another potential impact. Clearing and grubbing existing vegetation affects wetlands too. Discharging untreated or improperly treated highway runoff into a wetland area can also be damaging. The job of finding a balance between meeting project goals and minimizing the impact on wetlands falls into the hands of the project designer and the department biologist. Together, they work to develop a project that will satisfy transportation needs as well as be environmentally acceptable. When a project does impact wetlands, a mitigation plan is developed to compensate for the affected wetlands. A cooperative effort of biologists, landscape architects, and highway design and maintenance engineers develops the mitigation plan. This interdisciplinary group considers many possible alternatives. Some include creating new wetlands from upland sites, enhancing or improving an existing wetland, or perhaps excavating and restoring a previously filled wetland. Generally, for each acre of wetland that is impacted, an acre of a similar type of wetland must be created. However, the functions of both the replacement and the affected wetland sites are weighed heavily before the mitigation is finalized. This mitigation plan is reviewed in detail by the federal, state, and local agencies granting permits for the project. Once the plan is agreed upon, it is incorporated directly into the project design and construction plans. It is vitally important that these plans be carefully followed during the construction phase. Proper construction of the wetland is the key to a successful product. For example, the development of a wetland and wetland vegetation are very dependent on proper soils, retention of water, and gentle slopes to achieve the right blending of land and water. On-site construction must be carefully planned to protect adjacent wetlands from all construction activities, including operating and parking heavy equipment, and storing or staging construction materials. Protecting existing vegetation in and adjacent to wetlands is important, since any natural revegetation is dependent on this as a seed source. Good temporary water pollution control practices and properly disposing of excess soil and construction debris are also important. But grading and construction combine to make only the first phase of creating a wetland. After construction, the wetland mitigation plan calls for monitoring of the development of vegetation and the productivity of each site to ensure it is successful. In fact, the DOT usually must guarantee in writing to permitting agencies that a productive wetland will be developed, vegetated with wetland plants, and inhabited by wetland-dependent animals. This is where maintenance personnel become involved in wetlands. They are responsible for managing wetland sites created through mitigation. Therefore, maintenance personnel should be familiar with site location, as well as what is intended to occur at each site. Conservation area signs identifying areas needing special care have been posted along the roadsides to help DOT people in the field recognize those areas. However, signs are not posted at every site. Thus, identifying some wetlands during the summer drought is not always easy for the casual observer. In those cases, maintenance personnel are encouraged to contact department biologists for help. Along with managing wetlands, DOT maintenance crews play a very important role in reducing wetland impacts and preserving existing sites. Material from catch basins and ditch cleaning must be properly disposed of in upland sites to avoid affecting wetlands. Vegetated ditches provide cleansing for highway runoff water that eventually enters lakes, streams, or wetlands. These ditches should remain vegetated whenever possible. For example, a 200-foot vegetated ditch with less than a 3% slope removes 80% of the non-dissolved pollutants. Care must also be taken in the application of pesticides, brush control, and other vegetation management techniques to avoid affecting the productivity of wetlands.
Wetlands are vital to the ecological health of our state. Carrying out the department's transportation program sometimes affects wetlands. In our project development process and in the operation of the transportation system, I encourage everyone to take the appropriate steps to avoid wetlands where possible and to replace those wetlands we can't avoid.
As you can see, each step, from design through construction and maintenance, plays an important role in the protection of wetlands. Be it a clump of algae, a shorebird, or even a human being, living organisms are affected by the health of Washington's wetlands. As humans, we have the greatest ability to alter our natural environment. For that reason, we have the greatest responsibility in seeing that nature's way continues, unaltered, for the benefits and beauty of generations to come.